she organized our staff gift this year, which was a huge undertaking, so thank you for doing that. Yes, it's always so much work, so thank you for taking that on. Carrie Jordan, who's not here tonight, but she put on our bazaar and the collection drive and helped with the giving tree, and Amy Jones helped with the giving tree as well, so thank you for all of you for putting that together. And then thank you to our fundraising team who has been working so hard, scrambling and dealing with all of our road bumps as we try to finish out all of our All-Star Celebration prizes. So thank you, and our treasurer, because it's been a joint effort as we have been hitting roadblock after roadblock, so thank you. Sabina, can we pass the minutes from 11:15?
Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes?
Yes.
And does anybody have any changes to the minutes? No. Not any changes, then I'm gonna move that we vote with unanimous proclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Minutes are passed.
Thank you. Since we don't have slides yet, can you do your treasurer report, please?
Sure. Balances as of end of January is $128,051.39.
Is it?
That's all I got. You want more?
Does anybody have any questions on the budget? Okay, great. All right, we have our slides up. So we are the Adams 12 GT parent group here. The president is Vivian, and she's going to come and talk about ways that you can get involved as parents. So thank you for being here.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'm the president of the group. I've been the president since 2022, but I've been involved for about 5 years. I have Jill Cables with me. She's the president-elect, so she will be the one that you'll be hearing from starting next year. So what is the parent group? So the parent group is a group of volunteer parents and caregivers of Adams 12 with GT students, and not only GT but also talent pool. Every parent that has a GT or talent pool student can be a part of the group. We support families by providing resources, education, advocacy, and opportunities for community building. This group started about 10 years ago, and the main focus was just to bring more GT community together. I feel like you guys are very fortunate that you are in a school that, I believe either the whole population of students or the majority of the population of the students are the students that we serve, but that's not necessarily the case, across the district. So how we build community is by creating events and putting together things for parents and students. We offer anywhere between 2 to 4 parent education speakers throughout the year, where we bring experts to talk to parents. These sessions are usually free. They're hosted at the ESC, the Educational Center for Adams 12, close to us here in North Glen. Thornton, right there in Thornton, but super close to here. We also put together a lot of events, especially for students. So we have coming up Middle School Madness, which is an event just for middle school students that is kind of like a minute to win it event. Students are put together into groups and they have to solve these cool puzzles, and they have their time and they compete for prizes. We have theater events, we have Passport to the World. Some of you may have heard of the Super Saturday event that we used to host every year. The issue that we've been having, which I feel like most organizations like this one probably face, is lack of volunteers. So we have a lot of families that want to participate in the events, and we have volunteers for the days of, which are great. We need more assistance from parents in organizing these events. They a lot of times take months of planning, and right now we don't have a lot of parents involved in that area. So if you love putting events together and you want to join, feel free to come to our meetings as well. I put together a website and email there, but I'll have them, the last slide has some QR codes if you'd like to scan. But I just wanted to bring to your attention the next events we have. So March 1st, we still have a few spots, I believe, for Middle School Madness. It is a really fun event. If your student is reluctant of coming by themselves, we've heard from so many students that they make friends at this event. They really enjoy participating. It's a Friday evening. March 7th, we are partnering with North Glen High School, and we're doing a backstage tour of their high school theater program. So parents, and the whole family can come, parents and students, they can see how they do makeup in high school, how they do lighting, how they do the acting. They will have several stations to do a backstage event, and then afterwards they can come and attend the play. So the cost for Middle School Madness is $15. The theater backstage is free as long as you buy a ticket to watch the play any of the 3 days that they're having the play. So it's a way that we are supporting North Glen High School theater program and also creating some opportunities for our students. Our next leadership meeting is on April 22nd. We have a leadership and liaison meeting. So the liaison role here for your school is Sarah George and Selena, that's Selena's last name? Martinez, thank you. They're both the liaisons for the group. So their role is to connect parents to our group. And also when our group has activities, to bring things to the parents in their school. I just have the 2 QR codes there if anybody would like to scan it. I just always like to point out too that we are an affiliate of CAGT, the Colorado Association for Gifted and Talented. So when you join the association and you pay your fees, you're supporting our group too. Some parents ask, how do you do fundraising or how can we support the group? Our events pretty much, when we charge for fees, they're just to cover the costs for the event. So being associated with CAGT is a way that you can donate money to our group as well. So here we have some QR codes and I can answer any questions. Anybody has? I mean, I know everybody's super anxious to come, organize events. Go ahead.
Yeah, my oldest is in kindergarten. Are
Yes.
there any events that are kind of organized more around that age group as opposed to middle school?
Yes, we do. We don't have any coming up right now. I mean, your family can join the theater one as a family. When we host Super Saturday, we host from kinder through 5th grade. And Super Saturday is an event. It's a whole Saturday, and we have specialists from the community come and teach fun classes for the kids. So the last one that we had somebody come with like a vet clinic, and they talked about how to be a veterinarian. We had martial arts. We had so many fun classes. The telescopes, and they brought giant telescopes to teach the kids how to do things with astronomy, and so it's a really fun event. It's just hard to put together. So this year we actually didn't have enough parents to help organize. So in the 10 years of the group, it was the first year that we didn't host it. So we're hoping to bring it back again next year. But we tried to do at least 2 elementary focused and 2 middle school focused a year. We do escape rooms and middle school madness, those things more for middle school students. Right. We don't host a lot of things with high school students because they are usually so busy that it's hard for them to want to participate in an event like this. But the way that we partner with high school students is that they can join our events as volunteers and get community service hours.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
I would say if you have any questions, just try to come to one of our meetings. All of our meetings are open to all parents. We host them, the ones with the liaisons are in person, but the regular leadership, we have them in person and virtual throughout the year. So if you go to our website, you'll be able to see when they're virtual in case you're like, oh, I don't have the time, but I can kind of just join in and see what's going on. But that's it.
I have one more thing. Even just signing up for the newsletter from us
Yes.
would get you the first. What am I trying to say? Did he finish the sentence?
No, that is a great reminder. Yes. So we don't have access to, the database of parents who have identified kids from the district. The district partners with us a lot, which is great. So a lot of times if we have important information, we ask the district to send information out from us, but it's not every single newsletter. So if you want to know what's going on with the group, I definitely recommend scan the website, and there is a portion there that you can just add your email. This way we'll get our monthly newsletters. So if there's ever an event coming up or you want to hear more about it, you'll be able to get those news firsthand. Otherwise, we have no access to to the parents. So definitely, yes, sign up for our newsletters. When we do host big events, like I said, we partner with the district, they send an email out, but I feel like those kind of get lost sometimes because we get 5 million emails a day from different things about all of our kids. So definitely, yes, that's a great reminder to get here. And the Facebook group, I try to post all of the events that are coming up there as well, and you can ask questions to other parents. I feel like it's also a great way to connect with other parents that might be in a similar situation, and sometimes you might be a little nervous to approach the teacher yet, or the school where you're like, hey, my kid is struggling with this, has anybody been to the same situation? Those are great forums to connect.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
How many of you are in the GT Facebook group? A lot of us, yeah.
Awesome.
Did you all see all the Hulstrom questions and love that was happening?
Yes. Do I take my kids to Hulstrom or Stargate?
Exactly.
That is the biggest one. We do get that a lot. And I'll say, if anybody, we try to connect parents with the liaisons, but if anybody here is like, you know what, I love talking to parents about my experience, or I've had a kid at Stargate, and I know parents that have kids in both schools currently, or moved from one school to another, and you're like, Vivi, I would be happy to talk to parents. Send me your information. I would love to pass it on to other parents, because it's a difficult choice. I have a daughter that goes to STEM lab, and when we were looking at schools, magnets and other things, I felt like it was an impossible decision. So I think all parents here can relate because we made a choice, right? So if you want to connect with other parents, feel free to email me. I'll happily send your information.
Awesome.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to share some PTA updates before we get to Dr. Ehrlich's presentation. So the thing that I would like to present to you is our 2024-2025 PTA Board of Directors slate. And so slated for president is our current Vice President, Jamie Dorn. Our Vice President would then be Sabina Raver, who is our current new family chair. And then we have Kim Sandoval staying as treasurer and Kim Del Collier staying as secretary. So that is our slate for next year. We will send out the bios when we send out the vote. So essentially it's open for a month now. If anybody would like to run open forum, you can submit your name to the ring. I know you're all dying for that. And then we will send out the vote in March and make it official. So we are in the recruitment process right now. We are looking for a new family events chair. And so if you or someone you know would be interested in helping us plan our barbecue and fun run in September, or the bazaar in December, we are looking to fill that role. Or if you just want to be involved in something else, we've got tons of other opportunities that aren't necessarily board positions, but you can get involved on our leadership team or as a board member at large. So we are looking if you are interested in joining the PTA next year. With that, I'm going to go through our departments and let them share updates. The question that I received from the community is for our fundraising team to share updates on the glow party and the limo party and the spare night. No, I actually did. So if you guys could give updates, that would be wonderful.
I'm going to stand up. Okay. Well, hi everybody. I'm Amy Jones, and I'm with Yasmina. I'm the co-chair of the fundraising committee.
I was just waiting.
Oh, you're waiting. Okay. I'm standing in my box. Got a few updates on the activities for the All-Star Celebration events for kiddos that reach certain fundraising levels. Our party bus was scheduled for earlier this month, and unfortunately the day of had mechanical issues, and so we had to reschedule that. We're still looking at some other dates. Last I heard, probably May 16th or 18th. May 16th or 18th. We've got it. Not only do we have the party bus, but they're going to the bowling alley and Chippers And so we had to communicate and work with Chippers for dates that they have space for 80-some kids to go bowling. So working on a new date for that. The Glow Party is occurring on March 15th at Skate City, and we are sending out information on that and permission slips tomorrow, most likely tomorrow. And hopefully the kids will just have a blast. We have Skate City has some buses that are going to come pick up the kids from the school and transport them after school to the Skate City, so it should be a lot of fun for those kiddos. And then game day we had in January in the gym, and we had lots of games, lots of popcorn, lots of screaming, lots of running. It was a blast. And a big thank you to Jacqueline and Yasmina for hosting like the world's best dance party ever. It's so fun when you see like 50 kids lined up in the gym doing like the Macarena. It was just a blast. So thank you to you both for leading that. I think that covers everything. The auction, we're not doing an auction this year because we don't need to with our funding that we raised from the All-Star Celebration. So thank you for that. And then Yasmina, do you want to talk about spirit events?
I got you, girl. Our next Spirit Night is March 22nd. It's a Friday and it's at Chuck E. Cheese. March 22nd at Chuck E. Cheese. That'll be a fun one. Are there any questions from fundraising team? For fundraising team.
For the skate party, are the parents pick up at Skate City?
Yes.
Okay.
So buses will be here right after school and they will be picked up by 6 o'clock at Skate City. Yeah.
You said Glow Party is March 15th?
Yes.
Okay.
Friday, March 15th. Should be great. All right. So the next thing are family events, but neither of them are here. And so our carnival will be on April 12th. So save the date for that. It's our indoor spring carnival. We get lots of questions the week leading up to it. Are we canceling because of weather? No, the answer is no. It's an indoor spring carnival. It will be inside regardless of weather. So make sure you save the date for that. That will be a lot of fun. And then staff appreciation. We have a new kinder parent. Her name is Danny Luciano. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Okay, good. And she has taken on our staff appreciation role. So she is planning to cater a meal on March 6th for our staff during conferences, and then we are doing a potluck on March 7th. So if you have an opportunity to donate soups or salads, side dishes, desserts, there's a sign-up genius that you can find in the PTA Hulstrom Happenings newsletter. Kasha is going to talk about Pi Day, maybe talent show. I don't know if you have any updates.
Yes, I was trying to check the date on the talent show, but it's not there yet. Hi, I'm Kasha Winkler, and I take care of some events with PTA. One of those big things is actually happening this month. March is a huge month for our Pi Day celebrations. As you probably know, we already ordered our t-shirts, and they will be arriving shortly. We will have a pie making contest where you can make either savory or sweet pie, and will be entered into a contest on March 13th, and the winners will be announced during the Pi Day assembly on the March 14th, and we will have our regular celebration that Mrs. Newberry organizes. We will have our winners, whoever memorizes more than 50 digits of pi is getting a cupcake, and our students who memorize the largest number in that grade will be given a personalized t-shirt with I memorized whatever number of digits of pi, and I feel like I'm forgetting something. We will also have our pie eating contest and throwing pie at our administration for the 2 winners, and all our regular super fun stuff. And my next event is, I believe it's a talent show, and that's going to be after our winter break. So I don't remember.
break.
Sorry, spring break. That's after our
You're
spring
like having
break.
another winter break?
No. Yes. So it's after our spring break, but I believe that our auditions are right before the spring break. I'm actually having a meeting with Mrs. Guffey tomorrow, so we will iron that out and we'll be sending that with PTA updates. If there's any questions, let me know. Anyone? Yes?
For the actual pie,
Uh-huh.
does the child have to make the pie? Can it be made by the parent with assistance from the child? What's the rules around that?
There's no rules. You can submit your pie. It's a competition for kids and parents and
Collaboration's always.
yes, collaboration's always the best. But kids get very
As long as it's
creative.
still okay for me to eat.
And then our staff gets to vote on it on the 13th, so the pies will be set out in the teacher's lounge from I believe 10 in the morning until like 1 p.m. and at 1:30 because that's when the middle school lunch ends. So everybody gets an opportunity to try all the pies, and that's when we vote and we announce the winners the day after. What was your question?
I have a couple questions.
Yes.
Is there a limit how many pies per family?
No.
No, there's a sign up genius, so however many you sign up for.
Like buying 8 lottery tickets instead of 1.
you can always try your luck, yes.
And then this one's really important. Is it nut free?
You can if you mark them nut free, that would be appreciated, but they don't have to be nut free. But we ask if there's dairy free, canola oil free, and gluten free. We would like them to be marked as such. So because we have some staff members that do have some dietary restrictions, and it's much easier for them to actually try at least some of the pies when they know that it is. I don't think that anyone on the staff actually has a nut allergy, but we have gluten-free people, we have dairy-free, and yeah, and canola oil is a big one too. So those are the 3 major ones. So we just ask you to mark your pie with whatever the name of the pie, and I will actually have all the information ahead of time. I will be the one receiving the pies, and so we can properly present it, and we will let our staff know about the dietary things that go into it.
So, how many cheesecakes squeak in as a pie?
Yeah, it's
Or would it have to be?
That is up to you. I am not
We'll
putting.
taste your cheesecake. That's a beautiful that you're just gonna have to taste.
It'll be a bit of congeniality kind of.
Pie pan, you know, it's
So I like I said, there's really no rules. We haven't been putting rules on. We just put X amount of pies that we would like to get. So there's something for all the staff to taste, and sometimes when there's stuff left for the next day, mostly the more non-perishable stuff, we still I put it in a refrigerators and bring it out the next day because I'm here 2 days in a row, pretty much all day with the Pie Day celebration events. So, and with that, I would like to definitely thank Mrs. Newberry, who's really spearheading all the mathematical part of that. And I wanted to thank Mr. Hedberg for all the help with the t-shirts and facilitating all the communication and the process of choosing the winner and helping us make the design what it is. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll let it move forward.
Thanks, Tasha. Thank you. All right, our next person is Sabina. Do you have any new family updates for us? Yeah. In front of Yasmina's camera.
Hi, I'm Sabina. I'm the new family chair, and as you guys all know, the admissions results went out, and so we've got our new class kind of compiling, and then we'll start off with the new family events. But I really just wanted to say thank you so much to all of the families and parents that answered all sorts of questions. Like, I am constantly looking on Facebook to try to answer any Hulstrom questions, and I've been so impressed by how many families have like beat me to it to like rave about Hulstrom and to give advice and all of those things. So I just really wanted to show my appreciation to everybody that has been doing that, to let the people that are deciding between schools and just to, you know, get our name out there. And then the other thing is we host a lot of play dates over the summer. So especially for any families that have an incoming kindergartner but an older child too, if you would think about hosting a play date. So we try to have play dates for all of the kiddos that are coming in. So we have a lot for kindergartners, but we do occasionally have kids that are coming in the older classes. So if you have an older child, if you would be willing to host a play date so that some of the new kiddos that are coming in the older classes have a chance to get to know some classmates before school starts, that would be great. Thanks.
And then our last department is communication, and Jackie's been working on our newsletters. She doesn't have any updates to share with you, but we have been taking some pages from other PTOs in the district, and I think next year we're going to move towards a bi-weekly newsletter. Is that how I would, yeah, bi-weekly? Is it bi-weekly? Twice a month. We're gonna try to communicate a little bit less and make it a little bit more impactful, because especially now, like after Christmas break, our communication slows down and it's a lot of repetition. And so any feedback that you have, like we've moved away from sending them from class reps to having the school sending them out. Any feedback on what we're doing or how we can improve, we're always looking to improve our communication. Whether it's on Facebook, or if we should explore other social medias, or if we should bring back our text alerts, or anything that has to do with our communication, please feel free to provide feedback at any time on anything that we do also, not just communication, because we are always looking to improve and be as inclusive as possible. You're still discussing the line? Okay. And that's all that I have for PTA updates. Does anyone have any questions for us? Sorry, I didn't move. Yes, Mina. Okay, so Dr. Ehrlich is up with school updates and her presentation on conflict resolution.
Okay, thank you guys for being here tonight. Just to echo what's already been said, yes, thank you so much. It's really hard to be on Facebook and not respond to like anything that you read on Facebook, because you're like, ugh, that's not right, or yes. But so thank you to all of you guys. We've had a really just solid 2024 so far. We have finished all of our winter assessments. We screened 164-year-olds and 5-year-olds to come into kindergarten next year. We have a really large wait list at all of the other grade levels too, so it's great. It's a ton of work, and also it's the right work. So also we're really excited when it's like now. So we are just gearing up now. We have got, the next 4.5 weeks now, and then spring break, and then after that we have CMAS, and then after that is May, and then it's summer, and it's crazy, right? When you actually look at it from events like that. So hopefully, you guys are able to get the weekly newsletter. We'll continue to send ours weekly, so if there is ever anything that needs to be sent out that family need to be aware of, you can always send it to us too, and we can put it in our weekly one if you guys are going to twice a month. So wanted to share that. And any big burning questions before we get started on this presentation? Any big updates that I'm really missing? Miss Korea, thanks for being here. Miss Leppy, thanks for being here. Yes.
A question came up from a group of friends about the conferences next week. Are they student-led conferences? Some people were told student-led.
So sometimes it depends on the grade level.
Okay.
So it depends on the grade level. Some grade levels do student-led, some don't. And then because it's funny talking about Pi Day, we were joking around that we're going to get shirts that say we're not just mathletes, because actually our girls volleyball team is doing really, really well. And so the first round of their tournament is this Thursday. They have a bye because they're currently ranked in first. Yeah. And then so their first game in the tournament will be Monday. It will be here. We don't know who it's against yet because it depends on who the Thursday game is. and then the championship is on Thursday. It'll be at a high school. We're not sure which one. We're not sure who, but we are pretty sure we're going to be in it.
Show up to the game.
Exactly. Well, so and then because of that, you should, if you're in if you are in middle school, in the middle school newsletter talked about that we switched middle school conferences because of that. Because we don't always know when things are going to be scheduled when we first schedule things. Because that Thursday was originally a conference day, that's now the conference day for K-5. Middle school switched theirs to March 5th. If you're a middle school parent, hopefully you're reading the newsletter and you saw that. If you have any questions, reach out to me. Because we have so many girls at the 7th and 8th grade level who are in volleyball, and also staff wanted to be sure that when they make it to the championship that they could attend to support the girls. So that's why that switch. Yeah, but for student led it kind of depends on the grade level.
But our kids would know if they're
Yes.
supposed to be there and do something.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Any other questions? The game on Monday usually starts at 6. And you have to, I think it's, oh man, I should know this, because this is like our 3rd sports of the year. It does cost some money. I want to say it's like $3 or $4 per person. It's something like that.
Students are 2 and adults are 3.
Okay.
And then you can buy the $20 punch card.
Yes, in case you want to
Cash
take in boys basketball, because that season is starting up too.
Cash only.
Yeah. Cash only. Or I was joking around that last time that if I give you an IOU that I'm writing in Sharpie on your forehead and then we're square too. So either way.
Last time Mr. Hamlin said.
Is the game here?
Yes. So Monday the game is here. Yeah. And then Thursday will be at a high school. Any other questions? All right, conflict resolution, everybody's favorite. So I was laughing, I was like, okay, so if you think cheesecake is a pie, you go over here. If cheesecake is not a pie, you go over here. We're gonna meet in the middle and we're gonna practice conflict resolution. No, I think, conflict resolution, just conflict in general gets a bad rap, and yet we all deal with it all the time. And so, wanted to just talk through things that we do at Hulstrom so that there's a better understanding of what we do here when there's conflict, so that then you can mirror some of those pieces at home as well, right? Because conflict is a very necessary, sometimes uncomfortable part of life. Right? So we're very quickly going to go through these. Here's the reality is I could probably do like a half, if not a full day workshop on everything I'm about to talk to you on in the next 20 minutes. So, philosophical overview, and again, I will send this out. I always send it out. So I also we make sure that the slides also make sense, right? But it is the process of ending a dispute and reaching an agreement that satisfies all parties involved. And so that is how we essentially define it here. Since it is an essential part of being human, effective conflict resolution is not designed to avoid disagreements, right? Sometimes the only way out is through, and more often than not, that is actually the case. So it's natural, it's expected, it can be emotional, and that is all okay. And sometimes I like to think as gifted as like a heat lamp, right? So anything that happens and you shine gifted on it, and it just makes everything a little bit more hot, right? Because gifted kids, gifted people tend to just in general be a little more sensitive, a little bit more intense, sometimes have a pretty strong sense of justice, especially that they're right and other people might be wrong. And so it's all of those things that we are wanting to work through. I see all this like back here. Yeah. So we support conflict resolution through school-wide restorative practices, that are then reinforced with like policies, discipline practices, and appropriate consequences if needed, right? But we always try to enter into that learning space first because there is a whole lot to be learned through conflict, right? Especially if we teach it the right way. So strengthening students' capacity to evaluate their problems and consider a number of solutions that leads to a better, less impulsive conflict resolution. And this ties to the productive struggle that we were also talking about last time. We want to give kids like the understanding and the self-efficacy, the self-belief that that they can actually work through this, right? Because at the end of the day, when they're leaving us and going into high school, we want them to be able to do this on a more independent level, right? Because it is a part of life and it's not going to go away, right? So we talk a lot about first managing emotions and how do we stay regulated. So a little bit of brain research, because again, I just can't help myself. So the foundation of effective conflict resolution, it really lies in the executive part of our brain, right? Which is the frontal lobe. And that's where when you are, as we say it, in your frontal lobe, then you can ask and answer questions like, what can I learn from this? And then if you're not in a super regulated state, you will first go to the emotional state, so your limbic system is activated, and really the only question you're asking is, am I loved, right? So you're not in a super safe place, you're not in a place where you can learn, you're not in a place where you can reason through, you're not in a place where you can reflect. And then if you're really dysregulated, you're gonna be in that survival state where really your brainstem is activated and really then you're just like, am I safe, right? So that's one of the biggest pieces first in managing emotions. If you're not in your executive state, that's the first thing we're going to do is help you try to get to your executive state, right? Because talking to somebody about conflict resolution really can't happen until you're there, right? So we talk a lot about the size of the problem and also the size of the reaction. And that's good because that can help get people back into that executive state, right? Just by saying, is this a big problem? So like if you were to put a number on this, what number do you think it is? And they're like, 150. And you're like, okay, well, your mom just didn't pack the sandwich you wanted. So actually, that might more be like a 2 because you could eat that sandwich, you could get like your choice of lunch over there, right? And so we do a lot of conversation around that because just even building in the self-awareness, right, and having to think through that will help kids move from especially the emotional state into the executive state, right? If they're in that survival state, they're not going to be able to do this yet either, right? So there's other things that we're going to do to get them regulated so that then we can have that conversation once they're even in that the emotional state. But this is a good one that we use, and it just talks about the size of the problem. And the other piece of it that we want to make really, really clear with conflict resolution, we are trying to teach that independence and their learning. And there are also problems where you do need to ask for help, right? Like there are problems that are an 8 or a 9 or a 10, right? And those problems, that's gonna change given like with their age. But we don't wanna discount that either. So calming anger. So students have many options to choose from to calm their emotions and return to that executive state. So we help them process by being regulated ourselves, right? And so there's that saying that when you're an adult and a child, or even 2 adults, the person helping has to be in a higher state than the person they're trying to help, right? So if they are in that emotional state and then we meet them in an emotional state, we can't help them because we're both in the same states. We have to stay in that executive state so that then we can help pull them up, right? And so that's a big piece. We do a lot about like anger, and the reality with anger that's interesting is there's like a picture and it's called the anger iceberg. And you know, an iceberg, you see the little tip top, right? And it's like what you see, and that's anger. And then there's everything underneath, right? Like the actual, like what is actually happening within a child, right? So it'll display as anger, but it's so much more than that. But they also, that's a really quick feeling that kids learn at a young age. And so we can think about that and just like, what are all of the things that we can do to just calm and focus and regulate our body to help us move into the executive state so that we can even have any sort of conversation about like what happened, right? And also like, what do we need to learn from this? So enter then in restorative practices, right? So that we do a lot of other things to help regulate kids as needed. But once they're regulated, then we can kind of go into that restorative practices piece. And restorative practices, so it's an umbrella term used for strategies that help us to proactively build community and relationships and manage conflict and tensions in ways that treat humans with dignity and respect. So we do a lot around that whole idea of like dignity versus respect. Like respect is something that's earned and dignity is something that everybody inherently has, right? So restorative practices, they're rooted in the relationships we build within the community, seeing different perspectives, and then repairing harm when behavior occurs that hurts those relationships, because people are going to mess up. And it's just a given. So then what happens when we do, right? Like what do we do? How do we move forward? How do we repair harm? How do we make sure that we're not repeating that same mistake over and over, right? And that's just a funny piece on perspective, right? One person sees the letter or the number 6, one person sees 9, and just because you're right doesn't mean that I'm wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side, right? Yeah, and there's a lot of truth to that, because when we're talking about conflict resolution, and everybody is like regulated and we've given that time and that space, and now we're entering into what actually happened and doing some of the things that we're going to talk about in the upcoming slides. Typically what happens is the kids are like, oh, I did not see it that way and I get it, right? And then they're able to tell their piece of it and then see that there's actually like that space in the middle, right? So there are the 5 R's of restorative practices: relationships, respect, responsibility, restoration, and reintegration, right? And sometimes, so this was just a visual we found. Sometimes when you look up restorative practices, if you do any research on your own, you'll see things like this where it says offender, and that's because restorative practices came out of restorative justice, right? Which was more from like the justice system, right? And restorative practices is like taking some of those same tenets, but how do we use them in schools to move forward, right? Because if 2 kids get into an argument, get into a conflict, something happens, we want to restore the relationship, right? And it doesn't mean that the relationship isn't that they're gonna be forced best friends, you know, or even friends for that matter. But like the relationship, how are we gonna continue to respect one another? How are we gonna continue to treat one another with dignity? What is my responsibility in this? What is your responsibility in this? Because everybody has a responsibility in this. Because the other thing I'll tell you is it is very rarely that this person is like completely right and this person has been completely wronged, right? It's usually that somewhere mixed in the middle. especially when we're talking about like 2 students. So we do a lot of work around Hulstrom huddles. So the other thing that you'll find if you ever do research on your own about restorative practices is there's something called connection circles. And it's just that, right? That there's rules and guidelines, and that you are in a circle, you have a talking piece. It can be used, to form community at the beginning of a school year and just get to know one another. It can be used to talk about content, so in a more academic setting, or it can be used to talk about some of like the hard things that we need to talk about sometimes in a classroom, right? So if something happens in a classroom, let's just say that somebody becomes very dysregulated all the way down into kind of like that survival state, right? And like just really has some big behavior in a classroom. Well, then we'll use a Hulstrom huddle, that connection circle, to kind of have that conversation of like, hey, when's a time that you've had a big feeling, right? Because it's about building the empathy, it's about building the relationship, so that when that student who was in that safety, right, in their brainstem, once they are regulated and able to come back into the classroom, that reintegration piece is there and they are ready for that, right? While also supporting the fact that like sometimes some of our kids might have really big feelings, and sometimes that's really hard to see, right? And sometimes because it is unexpected, that can be hard. And also, like, they are still a valued member of this community, and so how are we going to have this conversation coming back in, right? Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
Involve the whole classroom per se, or like who is involved in the huddle?
In the huddle is usually the whole class.
Okay.
Yeah. And like I said, we do it at the beginning of the year, so pretty much everybody does them like once a week, right? And it's also, it's that safe space too, where it can just also be like, hey, gosh, I saw a bunch yesterday. What did you do over break? Right? And it's just, so they'll have a talking piece, usually like a stuffed animal, only the person who's holding it can speak, and then they're, they take their turn and they say, what was my favorite thing that we did over break? And it's a quick way to make sure that everybody is like, voices in the room, everybody like, and so it starts off with more like that community building stuff. Yeah. They're really cool, they're really fun. Now restorative conversations, those are different. Those are more like one-on-one, but with a staff member to support, right? So we'll do effective communication. So I think with restorative practices, I always think back to this saying, the old school of like, what's wrong with you, to the restorative practices, what happened to you, right? So not attaching that like shame or anything like that to the behavior, but like help me understand what is happening with you that is helping, like that is making these big feelings, right? So we train everybody on this, all the way down to our student monitors, right? Because recess, there's an awful lot of conflict because it's the most unstructured time, and also like it's an amazing place to practice social emotional skills, right? But then it's not like, what we never want is somebody going up and they're crying and for somebody to be like, what's wrong with you, right? It's like, what happened? Like, tell me more, right? So that we can understand like all of those pieces, like understand the impact. We do a lot of work around that too, especially when we start talking more around some of these other pieces around 2 students who have a disagreement. Well, I thought this, well, I thought this, and then they start to understand one another's intent, and they also start to understand the impact of what actually happened, right? Because the intent could be, oh, well, I thought I was being really funny, but the impact was, well, that really hurt me, right? Or vice versa, or somewhere in the middle. So we use those words a lot too, especially down in the office with like admin and social emotional learning team. like what happened and that idea of intent versus impact. Because when we get down to it, I have never talked to another human being who's like, well, I just wanted them to hurt because I just want to go around hurting people. Like that is not where people live, right? There's usually something that's happened and the impact was not what they intended, right? So we teach this script a lot. I feel blank when blank because I need blank. So like, I felt really sad when you made that joke about the sandwich my mom packed for me. We're just gonna stick with that. Because it's my favorite sandwich and you made me like not want to eat it in front of you. So I need you to not make fun of the food that my family packs for me, right? A simple script, but powerful, right? And like validating in the fact that it's about impact, right? It's not like, well, I feel like you're a really bad person when you make fun of my sandwich, because only a bad person would make fun of my sandwich, so you must be a bad person, and I just need you to never talk to me again. Right? That's not how to use that script. And so there's an awful, like, we do a lot of like training and support with this as well. Also, we always joke around that would be like a great Saturday Night Live skit. Right? Like how to inappropriately teach conflict resolution. So peer mediation, this is really, typically what happens is someone's upset, someone's sad, they've come to somebody for help, they're like, okay, I think there's more to this. They typically come down to the office, and we're going to help them learn this script once we understand what happened, once everybody's in that executive state, because again, you cannot have the conversation about what can I learn from this, what do I need to take away from all of this if you're not there, and have a peer mediation. This is not like a consequence. There's people in here who have had, their kids have had peer mediations and they go very, very well. And really it is just a process to resolve that conflict between two people. And so when we do a peer mediation, we talk, well, first of all, we know what happened, right? And we have individual conversations with the people who are involved, and then we bring them together if they are able to come together. This is not something that we force either. And then we have like a facilitated conversation where they can practice this script with one another, right? And that's important. So number one, if they're ready, like, are they in the executive state? Because again, we don't want this script to go to my non-example, but to stay in the example space, right? And if we go into the emotional place, that's when we start to like presume that negative intent about others. So number one, that they're in the executive state, and number two, they're to the point in the executive state where they're able to be reflective about their role in the conflict, right? And that's on both sides, right? And then we're able to bring them together and have an actual conversation to resolve the conflict, right? To understand how one another is feeling, to understand like intent versus impact, to begin to repair that relationship so everybody can be reintegrated back in to the community as like a whole, right? And so it is not bullying or therapy or counseling or ratting on each other or getting somebody in trouble, right? The peer mediation is usually the result of several other conversations, right? Conversations that first start with what happened, and then individual conversations, and then conversation together. But at the end of the day, we're trying to teach these skills so that when they do get into a conflict, number one, they have the self-efficacy that they can have these conversations, and that they have like the skills to make sure they're staying or can get themselves back into that executive state, and then think through this in terms of like, what am I actually feeling and what do I actually need? So then we talk a lot about rude versus mean versus bullying. Our society has done a really good job of labeling everything bullying when it's not, right? I would love to say that no one's ever going to be mean to one another, that no one's ever going to be rude to one another, right? And they are, right? So what tends to happen here, especially when a child might go home to a parent and they're like, they're bullying me at recess and I can't handle it and I don't want to go to school tomorrow and this is horrible. And so then, the parent emails me and is like, my child's being bullied, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We'll start looking into this. And then we find out that, what's a popular one that I'm thinking of? Recess. They're out playing football, and they were like, well, nobody really wants this person on our team, but you can, go stand over there and watch us or something. And we're like, no, that's just mean, right? And then that person, because they were hurt because somebody was mean to them, goes over and hits the other person and is like, I hate you. And then they go home and, right? First of all, what tends to happen, number one, always communicate with us when your child goes home and tells you that. But know that typically what happens is when we find out the whole story, that there's like the iceberg, always all this stuff underneath that happens. And then two, that difference between rude versus mean versus bullying. So rude is that like inadvertently saying or doing something that hurts someone else. If you have a child or your child encounters somebody who maybe struggles picking up social cues, and they're like, oh, you got a haircut? And they're like, yeah, and like, I liked it better before. And they're like, right? Like, that's just rude, right? Is it intentional? No. Is there some social skills that need to be taught there? Yes, right? Mean, that purposefully saying or doing something to hurt someone once, maybe twice, usually based on angry feelings, right? Like, she was my best friend, but now she started hanging out with this person, so now I don't like this person, and I'm going to try to have my friend play with us, but I'm telling her she can't, right? That's mean, right? Whereas bullying is really that intentional aggressive behavior that is repeated over time and really has an imbalance of power, right? And so those are the things that we look for when we're saying, is it bullying? And the nice thing is that we certainly have some rude behavior. We have some mean behavior. And we really try to work through it once we know about it from like a conflict resolution standpoint. We have very little, if any, bullying here, right? Because we are able to kind of like intercede when it's in that rude, mean area, and before it's like repeated over time and really about like holding somebody down, right? That imbalance of power. But I think like just like where our society is at, that every mean behavior is like they're being bullied. And it's not to discount that somebody was mean to them, but there is a difference in the terminology too, right? So, policy and consequences. So let's just say that we did a restorative practice it, and or maybe even a few, right? And it still just isn't really happening, right? So we try to, as much as possible, stick to meaningful consequences, to the more natural consequences, because it's all about skills, right? So have you guys ever heard that, like, skill versus will? Like, do you lack the skill or do you lack the will, right? Again, most kids just lack the skill. And some kids, even some really, really brilliantly gifted kids, need a lot of repetition when it comes to some of the social skills and social norms, right? The imposed, that's more to motivate the children to use skills they already have. So when we know they already have the skills and then they're choosing not to utilize them, right? That's when more of the imposed consequences come in, and that's when we get into more like a policy violation. So, like it says, consequences, they actually don't teach, they just motivate to use an old skill or to stop using an old skill. So, really we try to, as much as possible, enter in on the natural consequences side of things. And restorative practices does have an inherent natural consequence, because if I hurt somebody, if I was mean to somebody, to have to look at them in the eyes and hear them say to you that you made me feel this way, and this is why, and this is what I need from you, like, that's hard, right? And also, like, it is essential for our growth. Again, we try to enter into consequences, not going like full steam ahead, but we're gonna do a more formalized learning piece. So a learning module, so students learn through mistakes. Hulstrom approaches discipline as a learning process, so we'll do a learning module first. Those are usually an alternate to suspension, but if something happens where they do have to be excluded from the school environment, we'll also have them typically do a learning module with that, because at the end of the day, wherever we are, we don't want to end up there again, right? So if somebody has impacted the school environment and or their peers to the point where either we could suspend them, we might do a learning module as an alternate suspension. If we do have to suspend them, then we'll have them do the learning module too. Just as a way to think through, there's a personal reflection piece, building knowledge. They have to learn about policy and then kind of like synthesize all of that together. Because again, we want them to learn, and we have a really good, I think in all of the years we've been doing learning modules, which I think we've been doing them for 5 years, we've had 2 kids repeat the same behavior after doing a learning module, which is good because again, we're trying to teach, right? So this is just kind of what the learning modules look like. And so it is formalized, it is tied to district policy. It'll look a little bit younger, like different for the younger grades, but also for the younger grades, we rarely use learning modules. Learning modules is more something that we do for the older kids when we already know that they have those skills, right? So obviously there's district policies around essentially the inappropriate ways that you could handle conflict resolution, like fighting, right? And so we also have the Student Code of Conduct, so that's policy 5000. I can link that in here too before we go in, but also all of the school board policies are available online. And so when we go through and do the learning modules, like I said, we do the personal reflection, building knowledge, and then like a policy review. So we have them go into the policy, into certain areas of that policy, and so that they're learning it too, so that they're thinking about and understand like why this is such a big deal, right? Because at that point, especially if we've already gone through and done a bunch of like peer mediations and stuff like that, because there are really serious consequences, and at the end of the day, we want all the kids here and safe and learning, right? Like a big one, especially like at the older grades. So, you're mean to me, I'm mean to you, we don't like each other, we're really struggling, we get into a fight. And I will also say, I think in the entire time I've been at this school, which is this is my 8th year, I think we've had like 3 fights, right? And they get stopped pretty quickly. But the district policy on fighting is that the second that you engage in a fight, whether somebody fights you and you fight back, or you're the one who instigates it, you're put, a 3-year clock has started, right? And if in that 3 years you get in 3 fights, you are up for a potential expulsion. That is important for kids to know, right? So like, that is not a healthy way to resolve conflict. And because it is not a healthy way to resolve conflict, the district has made a pretty strict policy around that, right? And so when we look at conflict resolution, especially with like the older kids, especially if they're making those choices, we need them to understand the impact of all of those potential choices, right? And because they are big, that's why too we focus on it so much with the younger kids on like, how do you do all of these things? How do you stay in your executive state and or get back up to your executive state? How do you regulate your emotions? How do you believe that like you can sit and have this conversation and actually resolve a conflict in a healthy way, side by side with your peers and an adult, and move forward so that it's not to the point where you are. If you are fighting, you are in that brain stem. You are like, am I safe? No, I'm not, so now I'm going to attack you, right? And or I'm being attacked. Like, that is not a place that we want anyone to be ever. But that's why that really early intervention and why we work on this and why we believe in it. And we've had just a really strong success with all of this. But then this way you can mirror some of like the language, you can understand a little bit more how we go about it, some of the terminology pieces, and just how important it really is to be able to like manage emotions and make sure that you're regulated. And here's the thing, people are going to go into that limbic state, into that emotional state. There's nothing wrong with that. You're gonna go into the brainstem, right? Into that safety piece. It's gonna happen, right? Usually when you're really tired and you have something big going on and you forgot to eat and you haven't had any water, and then all of a sudden something happens and you're in your brainstem, right? But how are you self-aware? What strategies do you have to bring yourself out? Questions? That's a lot.
Out of curiosity,
Yes.
what's considered fighting? Like,
Consider
I got kicked in the shin, or
she asked what's considered fighting. I mean, usually, it's gonna be like the swinging of, right? What?
Physical fights.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
so not just like a
no.
kick or a slap or
No.
anything like that.
No, so the question was what's fighting? Like if it was like a slap, that would be more like physical aggression, right? Or like a kick would be more like physical aggression. But when it's more of like an engaged piece, yeah. Like I said, we have very little of that here, which is good. And also, like we also work really hard to help kids like stay regulated and also learn the skills and strategies that when they are dysregulated, because people get dysregulated. Like that's not something to be ashamed of, right? It's how do we have the skills and strategies to get ourselves regulated again, right? Question, any others?
So the training that the teachers and like staff have, is it this, or is it like a whole separate curriculum?
Oh gosh, there's so much to it. There's a lot to it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would say it's like ongoing, right? Because this is not like you hear it once and you're like a professional at it. This is like ongoing training. This is also like a lot of like, reflection on our part too, right? Because when we're dealing with like human beings, every situation's like a little bit different. And so that's why lots of times too, especially when we're trying to figure out even what happened, like we're gonna have that conversation with like multiple adults and be like, okay, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm seeing, right? And just even trying to take the time to figure out like what actually occurred, because it's really, really hard to support anyone in conflict resolution if you're not pretty sure about what happened. And the reality is that often it happens when I'm not often there, right? And so I'm trying to figure out after the fact what happened. Same with like members of the SEL team, right? Or, like out at recess during those more unstructured times, right? Where kids tend to just have more of that like conflict. Any other questions? Okay, I worked really hard. Sorry.
One really quick.
Oh yeah.
So she's in 4th grade and she's starting to hear kids say like adult words. So she wanted to know if there was a policy about that and
the stages, like does it go from like the teacher to a reflection sheet to like later to
she also wants to make sure that they're not being tattletales, so she kind of wants to like draw.
Well, I think the difference is like, so we always say, right, like tattling versus like seeking help, right? It's like about intent. Are you doing it to get someone in trouble, or are you doing it because you need help, right? And that's like the biggest distinction. Like if you're doing it just to get someone in trouble, like that is kind of, right? Like that's the distinction. If you're doing it to ask for adult help, then that's never going to be tattling. No, like in that instance, right? Number one, let your teacher know. And number two, like that might be a great thing to have a huddle about, right? About like what kind of words do we use? And I think the reality is with social media and stuff like that, we do have younger kids using adult words, right? And, and I think that we also have just like the whole spectrum of parents, right? Where some are like, my child will never hear these words, and others where it's like, that's fine for us, right? And so from a school perspective, it's like, and this is what we do here, right? So there is actually, it is in policy, it's in that policy 5000 student code of conduct, like no vulgar, profane, or dehumanizing language. And then also, if it is like dehumanizing, like, making some of someone's like race or gender or whatever, then that's under its own policy of harassment, right? So it kind of depends on the type of language. But we're always going to enter in first from that like lowest level instruction piece of, we don't use words like this and this is why, right? And it's not tolerated here at Hulstrom. Does that make sense, Nina? Good question. Yes?
Just as a parent who has these conversations with their kids at middle schoolers, high schoolers,
Yeah.
what you just said there, said, we don't use this language here and this is why. Tell me what you say for the why. I need some help.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah. I have 2 high schoolers too. And I'm like, sometimes with my son, I'm like, no, friend. Stop sending me those jokes. No, just kidding. No, I mean, I think what we always say here, right, is that like this is a place for learning. This is a place where we want everybody to belong and to feel safe. And I mean, like even talking about those brain states, right? If we hear something and it can be taken as like negative or like, then they're thinking about that instead of learning, right? Like we want people saying in their executive state, right? They have a strong sense of belonging. They feel safe, right? And that language can make people feel unsafe, right? And so you think about, it's like that whole empathy and compassion thing too. Sure, like if you're a stand-up comedian in a nightclub, like have at it and people can choose whether or not they want to come, you know? But this is a public space that we want everybody to feel safe. Because we hear that a lot, especially, thank you TikTok, with like, well, I was just kidding, or I saw it on TikTok, or, and then we call the parents like, they don't even have a TikTok account, but guess what, their friend does. So also that, you know? So that's what we tend to do, is take it to like a place of safety, right? Physical safety, emotional safety. Sorry, I told you, this could be a full day. Sorry.
We've already answered questions from the community. Does anybody else have any questions? Our next meeting is on May 16th at 6:15 in the cafeteria. And I will be sending out a vote for our board in March.